her on Instagram or Twitter, you definitely need to follow her because she says some stuff that you're like, okay, it's like super self-deprecating stuff, and I want to get into that stuff because I
Sure.
think that's very important. But I wanted to thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
It's rare that I get to talk to a lot of women in the fantasy football or fantasy sports sphere. So just off the bat, how did you get involved in fantasy?
I've told the story a couple different times in different ways, but all of it kind of stems from the exact same story, which was I picked up Matthew Berry's book, Fantasy Life, fell in love with the book, and already loved football at the same time. And there was just something about the way he described the industry, the space, and working in a field that he was so passionate about that it kind of awoke something in me where I was like, well, yeah, I'm passionate about fantasy sports, but I've never even thought about trying to jump into the arena myself. And he's been such an amazing mentor and someone that I've gotten to talk to on multiple occasions. And now I'm so grateful that I get to work for Fantasy Life as my second job, which is amazing that I'm working with him and with the amazing team that they've built over there. It all begins and ends with, to me, the godfather of fantasy football, which is Matthew Berry.
It's interesting, right? And I want to stay there because I look at Matthew Berry, and with all due respect to Matthew Berry, I don't think he ever played any meaningful football, right? I don't think he was ever really a basketball guy,
No.
baseball player,
Yeah.
But he found something that he was really good at. It was an untapped market. He made it his own.
Mm-hmm.
He made it where he was synonymous with fantasy. And I'm pretty sure starting off, there was a lot of people who pushed back at this guy who doesn't come from an athletic background
Sure.
in a space talking about athletics and then judging people based off their performances.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's interesting now that we fast forward all these years later, and a lot of women in the space get that same pushback
Yeah.
from a lot of the men in fantasy today, when in reality a lot of them come from the exact same backgrounds. And really, I have found a lot more women in the fantasy world actually have more invested knowledge or just natural general knowledge or athletic backgrounds than some of the men that get into the space.
Sure, yeah, I think that's incredibly common, and it's obviously very unfair when you look at people comparing each other in the space, or someone that's brand new to the space, whether they be a man or a woman, and someone's new and someone says, well, what makes you think that you can join this space? What are you bringing to the table that's different? But what I think that's amazing that people do, people like Matthew Berry, other people in the space as well. Kyle Yates has been great with me as well in terms of, giving great advice. Elliot Christ, CEO of Fantasy Life, has been amazing with giving me advice as well. It comes down to people that are passionate. At the end of the day, this is a space, and there's other industries like it, that if you are someone that is hardworking, has a passion for it, and a willingness to learn, then you're going to be very successful because you're going to ask the right questions, you're going to be respectful of the people that are around you, and be open to learning from them. And that's all that I've experienced from those mentors that I just mentioned in terms of who I've been asking for advice and what I take into every podcast, every new design I make, or any new interaction I'm having with somebody in the space.
Yeah, so the question then becomes, why do you feel like you have a unique voice in this space?
That's a really good question. I guess I look at my point of view the same way I look at art. And as an artist myself and looking at other artists, you can be given a prompt and say, okay, I need you to draw this. I need you to paint that. I need you to, write about this. And what's amazing about being an artist is you can be in a room with plenty of other artists, be given the exact same prompt, and everyone come back with something new and different. I think that's very similar in this space as well, where we can all watch a game and all of us can sit down after the game and say, this play was pivotal to me. Oh, that one to you, this one to me, this one to you, this one to me. And we can all go back and forth on looking at something from different points of view and being able to give our take, our knowledge, what we wish had happened, the things that were left on the table. I think it's kind of similar in that way. And that's why I feel like I deserve a seat in the space, because I feel like it's, at the end of the day, it's art, it's creative, it's based off of, truths in the game and what you're watching based on what these players can do. I think all of us have an opinion and we're all entitled to that opinion.
Absolutely. I think that the most interesting thing about you is I don't feel like you take yourself too serious,
I
right?
really don't.
Like when I watch you on Twitter and it's a very like it's not embarrassed. You're just okay with being who you are, like the unique you that you are, and sharing that with everyone. Because as you know, there are a lot of instances in this game, especially when you're trying to be in front of the camera or you're portraying an image, and that image doesn't always, you know,
Yeah.
doesn't always match what the reality is. And from what I've taken is that who you are there is who you are when the lights aren't on or when you're not tweeting or you're not posting. Um, is that something that when you got into the space that you were conscious about, or was that something that just kind of manifests itself?
That's a really good question because honestly, I feel like when I first started, I felt like I was dividing myself between what I wanted to make sure came across on air, which was being a certain level of professionalism, being knowledgeable, and having all of my sources lined up. So I wanted to make sure that when I jumped in, I had done my homework and came across that way. So my first couple years doing fantasy analysis and jumping on podcasts and writing, I was very much thinking that I was a different person when I started. But now where I'm at and looking backwards, I can see that actually I have always been my 100% self. I think that when I first started, it was that imposter syndrome that some people get of, is it okay that I'm here? Is it okay that I'm sitting at this table? And that was really what it was. It wasn't that I wasn't being myself. It was just so new to me. And there was that fear of something new. And, is this really something I can, sink my teeth into, be welcomed with open arms? And luckily over the years, it has been. And I've met all the right people, surrounded myself with other peers in the space that I've been able to, have the group chat with and say, hey, what did you think of this? And have those moments of accountability. And ultimately, from then to now, it's all been 100% me. I think the only things that people don't see all the time is what I do in my second job, which is as an associate art director for a sports and fitness company. I do packaging, marketing, all things when it comes to supplements. So it's this whole other side. So that's really the only thing I don't always bring forward to the table because I'm too busy talking about football.
Yeah, and quite honestly, football's the fun stuff, right?
It is the fun
It's
stuff.
the fun stuff.
Absolutely.
We were talking before we started about people that we would love to interview, right? We were both talking about our love for Mike Tomlin.
Yes.
Right. Your love, a little bit on the different side than my love. You were like, oh, Tomlin,
I would burst into tears if I had the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was more just like, it would be admiration as a coach,
Sure.
as someone who's played, like getting the opportunity to sit down with someone I think is like the gold standard and how this coaching thing should be done would be great. In the world that we're in fantasy sports, who's the person that you look up to that you can look at and say, okay, that's someone that's like me?
You mean like in media?
Like in media, in fantasy, like I said, there's not a lot of women in the space, but there are some women who have, carved out a really awesome, really big niche in the space. But if it's fantasy, if it's just media in general, like who are some of the people that you look at? Like I was looking at Charles Davis, who's been doing this thing forever.
Yeah.
It seems like, and as a black face on television, when he was the only black face on television that I saw, and now seeing more Nate Burleson, and it's inspiring. Who's that for you?
I'd probably have to say Liz Loza, who I'm very lucky now to be able to call a friend, and we talk very regularly in the off season and even during, and getting to watch her career and all the different moves that she's made, and everything she's done has definitely opened doors for others in terms of being able to see, not just women in sports and that's all, but everything she brings to the table is so unique. She's very forward with her personality in all of her takes. So now she's on ESPN and you get to see her bubbly self every single week. And I just think it's so much fun to get to see these new personalities that you don't always see. Sometimes I feel like sports media can get a little bit stuffy, get a bit stale. we're all covering the same thing at the end of the week. Every week we're talking about the same thing, but she's very unique in what she brings based on her personality, and her takes always match that up as well. And she also leans into her fandom, being the fan of the team that she has, big Bears fan. She'll lean on that a little bit in certain takes, but then she can also, dial it back. And I look up to a lot of the things that she does and a lot of the ways that she handles herself.
And I think one of the things that I really want to get across with this series is respect for people's knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to put your knowledge to the test right now.
Oh no.
Right. I'm going to put your fantasy knowledge to the test.
Why?
Full disclosure, I did not tell her about any of these because I wanted just first thing that came off her head type of answers. Okay.
I'm not scared at all.
No, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be at all. 2024. Who's your number one pick?
Ooh, okay. It's going to sound very chalky, but Christian McCaffrey has been very, very consistent at the position. And when you're looking at redrafts, especially in fantasy, he is the guy. He is in a tier amongst others that tend to pop in and out of it along with him. For me, at least right now, coming off the season that we just did, if you have him in Dynasty, he's not someone that you're moving unless you're moving him for 1,000 picks and a lot of draft capital, which if you're planning on rebuilding, it's not a bad move.
Not a bad move.
Not a bad move at all. But when it comes to redraft, I do still think he's going to be, an arguable top 3 pick in PPR leagues. And I think that's very consistent, especially just with his game. He's in a perfect system with Shanahan. I don't see that changing anytime soon, despite what may or may not happen this weekend. I do think that, he's just got that level of consistency, which is what you need in fantasy. Obviously, he took a lot of teams to the championships this year because he was so consistent. Ultimately, that's what you're looking for. Is you're looking for that player that's going to give you that ceiling, that and floor that you can feel really confident with going into every week.
Kyron Williams, his name is arrow
Going
pointed
up.
straight up almost. Do you think Kyron Williams is a top 5 pick next year?
I definitely think there's a good argument for it. Looking at, again, the position and how even the running back position is changing. We talked a little bit before about the tight end position changing for yourself as, the years have gone on. I do think players like him are going to continue to be on the rise. I think you can absolutely make the argument for him to go top 5 as well, especially given the position and how volatile it can be with injuries. I don't think that it's ever a bad move to take a top running back early and then to go back in the second round and grab another one as well, just because when you can get players like that aren't just running the ball, but they're available in the passing game, makes them so much better for fantasy, again, to give you that really healthy floor for points.
Who is the one player that was in the first round this year that absolutely you would not take in the first round next year?
Ooh. Probably Travis Kelce, to be completely honest, because I took him in a league and I only got him in one league. Of the 10 leagues I was in, I only managed to get him, I think, in one league. And it was because I took him early. And looking back on it, I don't think it was the wrong decision. But looking at how his stats have gone this season, he's obviously having an amazing postseason. But that's all he needs to do. He needs to just get there and be there with the team. And I think that as he continues to go through the team and everyone keeps rising up, the other tight ends are obviously getting more looks as well. And I think that the Chiefs offense is going to continue to evolve this offseason. I'm not banking on the Kelce of old. I should be banking on players that are going to have a bit more consistency, more consistent looks going through the season.
So when Kelce goes for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns in the game, I'm waiting for the post because you're going to be like, last year you didn't.
Last year you weren't here. Was it because of the mustache? This was the argument, going into the season, and he had that crazy mustache, and we're like, this is going to, I said, this is going to ruin his fantasy. And as soon as he started growing it out, his numbers went up. I'm saying. So
that's true.
If he goes,
and now he's
season,
rocking the full-on beard, and he's unstoppable.
Absolutely. So who knows? Maybe his look this offseason, maybe something else happens, and that's going to absolutely change my mind. Be like, you know what? No, he decided just not just go buzz cut. He went full bald, went full beard, and went just real deep with it. He's going to, be top 5.
Puka Nacua. Is he the new Cooper Kupp? Can we just slot him into where we slotted Cooper Kupp in, or do you think that with him now emerging and Kupp still being viable when healthy, that it makes for, I shouldn't say devalues him, but it just makes it where you may not put him on the same trajectory as you put a Kyron Williams?
Sure. Well, kind of the way that I look at those two receivers, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, is I kind of go back to Rams when it was Cooper Kupp being very, very young with Robert Woods. It was a fantastic combination. And I think in that offensive scheme, McVay is amazing at getting both of those guys available. And I think that when you have both players like that, someone that's young running up the outside with the speed that Puka's got, went to a game and watched him run, that man is fast.
Yeah, faster than people
fast.
believe.
Faster than you would even think. But that aside, him and Cooper Kupp, again, as long as Cooper Kupp is healthy, they're such dynamic threats that it does a disservice to that offense to not get them both utilized early and often when in any game, in any scheme, just because they're so talented and they're so good at making the catch, getting the yards after catch, just making anything work for them, which works really well in that system.
That's my only concern is that neither one of them seem to ever really get in the end zone a lot. Like, I don't know, I don't understand what it is about it, but they just don't reach the end zone as much as I need a wide receiver to reach the end zone.
We want them to end up with at least 3 touchdowns each in every single game.
Every single game. Like, why is he not getting 30 touchdowns a season?
Why not me?
Like that's really my issue. I thank you. I know that everything's crazy, everything's hectic. Here's to a lot more success. Congratulations on all the success so far. I'll continue to be watching and laughing and adding my little 2 cents into when you tweet stuff out. Tell everybody where they can follow you at and all that jazz.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Samantha R. Holt and on Instagram at Sam_awesome. And then if you haven't already, go over to fantasylife.com and sign up for the free newsletter. Amazing content from all of the amazing writers and analysts over there as well. Yeah,
and as always, make sure that you follow me at Gene Clemens. Like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that jazz. You know what the vibes are. This is episode 1. Hey, ladies.